Hello and welcome back to Coffee Kurosawa, the friendly film crit podcast. I am Ben Filipkowski, your resident film freak.
And I am Farrah Sarpkaya, a person who loves film, but like in a super chill Jeffrey Rush pretending to be a bad actor is so charming sort of way. And this week we are watching the 2010 film The King's Speech, starring Colin Firth as Bertie, also known eventually as King George VI, Jeffrey Rush as Lionel Lowe, and Helena Bonham Carter as Queen Elizabeth, but not the ruling monarch, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Consort, Elizabeth. The film begins with Bertie making a speech at a sporting event, and it's made very clear how much he struggles with it. He has a speech impediment, described in the film as a stammer, and we also see him struggling to work with a doctor whose approaches are they're just not working for him. He's not into this, not one bit. His wife, Elizabeth, takes matters into her own hands. She visits a speech therapist that she finds in the newspaper classifieds. And she tells him, hey, my husband has these requirements. But Lionel tells him in no uncertain terms, I don't care if your husband is busy. I don't care if he's famous. I don't care one bit that he is, next in line for the throne or a couple lines away from the throne. It's his way or the highway. Bertie is equally stubborn, and it is not until he hears himself read to be or not to be aloud perfectly over a recording that he agrees to Lionel's terms of equality and trust. Bertie improves, and after his father's death and his brother's abdication of the throne, Bertie becomes King George VI. However, he learns in a moment of surprise that Lionel has no official credentials. He's not a doctor. He never claimed to be one. But he did, in fact, learn his trade treating shell-shocked young men returning from World War I. And thus, Bertie has Lionel by his side for his ascension ceremony, and soon after, the titular speech, the King's Speech, that announces the beginning of the war with Germany. The film closes with some historical notes about the friendship between the two men, and Lionel's being made a commander of the Royal Victorian Order near the end of the war for personal services to the king. And that's about it. So Ben, what did you think?
I remember seeing this probably around like 2011 or 2012 after it was out on DVD. I watched it with my parents at the time. I remember really enjoying it then, but I haven't really seen it in the years since. So rewatching it, I don't want to say that like I've grown to dislike this movie, but it feels like there's something really interesting in this movie that is kind of hidden beneath layers of Oscar bait. The performances here are definitely the most consistently engaging things for me. They're all fantastic. I don't think there's a bad performance in this movie. Everyone absolutely crushes it. But how those performances are presented can flip really wildly between like this creative, unique energy and perspective, and then this like traditional, boring, really stolid way of shooting a movie. There's no real consistency between either approach. There's some genuinely fascinating shots here that really do get my attention and make me think that there's more going on. But then we also get some really dull compositions and digressions into things that ultimately aren't really the core of what this entire movie is about. Case in point, there are a lot of really interesting, almost distorted wide-angle shots. There's one that comes right after George VI takes the throne, and there's this really interesting use of negative space. But as I kept watching this, it really felt like they were just doing this because it looked good versus supporting anything that they're trying to say in the story. And ultimately, I think this is a movie about overcoming isolation, about finding one's own courage and kind of rebuilding your self-esteem and forging friendships and focusing on what matters to you as an individual. But it kind of forgets this angle and really pursues this like period piece drama, much to its detriment. I don't think it's a bad movie, but the things that grab me in this movie are not what the filmmakers were apparently ultimately interested in. I think is how I would sum it up.
I think what's most interesting to me about the story that is being told and how it plays against the fact it's a bit of a period piece is the fact that if you remove the fact that this is a real-life King George VI, the rest of the movie would still function properly.
Mm-hmm.
You could have made this a fully fictional film based off of the struggles of this one man trying to overcome his fear, to step into his truth or whatever, and it would still work. And the moments that they shoehorn in necessary historical fact, in terms of context, I suppose, creates a very weird dichotomy of, to your point, like really sweeping period drama of this is how the royal coronation is done, and this is how, this happened, and this is what the parliament was like, etc., versus this guy is rolling around on the floor to try to get his bravery and feel his own, mojo back, and the moments where it becomes at odds in that, it doesn't flow and make that historical context important enough to warrant it being there for me necessarily.
Yeah, I love my history. I love my historical fiction. And this kind of feels like it fails to be interesting historically. But the focus that it places on that historical context ultimately undercuts a lot of what it's trying to do with the individual story, with what Birdie's going through. I think that you could cut a lot of you could cut probably most of the scenes with the royal family beyond, the the eventual queen consort and the heir to the throne. And I think that it would work really effectively still. Because I think that there's a weird, we see George V in his waning days. His first scene is just him dropping exposition on Bertie. And it feels like lazy writing, because it's kind of like, Bertie knows all this. George V does not need to explain all of this to his own son, who's well aware of the situation with, the brother who will be king at some point and is apparently keen to shirk those responsibilities. And I mean, it felt so on the nose too, that they have I think they have the bit with I can't remember the order of it, but I believe Bertie goes to see Lionel, and Lionel's like, oh yeah, if you've been shamed as a kid or had certain behaviors corrected, that is a key cause of the stammer that you're trying to overcome. And then immediately afterwards, it's like, oh yeah, here's the source of it. Here's this father who is being exceptionally rude's not the right word. Yeah, just very you got to do it this way. You're going to speak into the microphone like a real man. Look it in the eye, and it's like, what are you talking about, my guy? This is it's so blunt in trying to convey that message, and I think it's telling us everything versus showing us. But I think it thinks it's showing us, if that makes any kind of sense.
Well, it's funny because we did just record Senjuro, and one of the things I literally said about it is that I love that they tell us and do exposition really well.
Right.
They do not do it really well here because it just doesn't make sense for the people that are telling each other the information that we are being given.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference there to make it make sense in the context of the story we're being told and the perspective that we're given. And I don't think that it would be necessary to cut all the instances with the royal family necessarily, because I think that does give some really interesting context around how they interact with each other. But I do think, to your point, that Bertie knows his brother is shirking responsibilities, and it doesn't come off as okay, Dad, yeah, you've told me this 50 billion times before. Please, like, this is repetitive at this point. It comes off as this is the first time he's hearing about this. And that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, they had to check the box of, like in case you don't know the history, here it all is in one go.
Yeah, in case you didn't see the sequel or the prequel of World War II history.
Yeah. Hey, if you don't know, here's everything you need to know. Yeah.
Yeah. It would have landed so much better even if Birdie had been going on to his wife about, oh my God, you should have heard Dad going on about David again.
Yeah.
Because that at least is a reason that he would be talking about it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that married couples do where they just or people with people that they love, of being like, oh my God, I cannot believe this person won't stop talking about this thing. Whereas, King George V is just like, you should know this information because you need to know it. It's like, I already know this. Yeah. But
and
I don't know.
Yeah, they also struggle with that a little bit too, because like towards the end when there's the scene where they have to sign documents of succession, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And George V is clearly experiencing dementia. The way that we know that he's experiencing dementia is that he says, I don't know what's going on. And he says it like 20 times, which I'm not trying to say that like, if you have had a family member, if you've encountered someone with dementia, or you've had a family member with dementia, the confusion is not necessarily, it's not that explicit.
Yeah.
Someone's not like, it's a lot. I don't want to go into too much on that, but it felt very like, hey, just in case you need to know what's going on, we're going to tell you exactly what's going on. So it just ultimately doesn't feel like this movie trusts the audience, which is disappointing, because I think when it really digs into the interactions between Lionel and Birdie, it's incredible. Like those scenes sing, they are able to banter and dig at each other and infer things and learn things about each other in a really interesting and meaningful way. Yes. It's just that all these other kind of capital H history scenes feel so like forced. And that is a big frustration for me. And, we also only have, we get the obligatory, hey, Edward VIII had some Nazi sympathies, like 2 times. That's a whole historical story that is fascinating to read. That actually, The Crown, I think the series The Crown did a few episodes on that were quite good. But it's I don't know. I don't want to dismiss this movie entirely, but there are I was just reading that article that I found about the cinematography in it, or the shot composition, I should say, in it. And I was like, oh, I'm not the only person who has issues with what's going on here. So,
yeah, I mean, well, let's talk about what's going on here, because I think if I just watched it, when I just was watching it sort of casually, there are moments where they'll put Birdie alone to the left-hand side of the screen, and it's very striking to show like he's alone, he's by himself, he's isolated. There's a moment where he and Elizabeth, his wife, are kind of in a hallway, kind of he's very small, and it speaks to the quality of the actors, of course, of how they're really able to bring that to life. And then versus later on, we'll see moments of a BBC announcer who is the consummate professional, played by Adrian Scarborough, where he does all of the warm-up exercises and all these things, and he is perfectly dressed and reads into the microphone as if he is speaking to God himself. And those moments hit really well. Yeah. And you notice them when you're watching it casually. You watch it again, you're like, wait, why is Jeffrey Rush, why is Lionel by himself in this shot? He's not the one that's isolated.
Yeah.
Wait, why is the Queen here versus here? And like, there are little moments where it starts to repeat that in places that don't make sense.
Yeah.
And it throws off my reading my close reading of the visuals to suit the story that it feels like they're trying to tell me.
Yeah.
And it gets jarring a little bit after a second watch, particularly for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that there's that opening. There are several speeches in this movie. Like they're saying the king's speech. The titular speech does not occur to the very end and is anything but a feel-good. I would not qualify that as like a feel-good speech, but it is certainly one of those like big moments of like, hey, we're all pulling together, that's kind of nice. But the opening speech, we get these extreme close-ups of Bertie as he's stammering and struggling, and you feel the gaze of other people on him and the judgment of other people on him. And that extreme close-up and that kind of wide-angle lens that they're using really conveys that feeling of, like, I guess, alienation. He's surrounded by people and feels nothing but persecuted and isolated from them. He feels shame over this challenge that he has, this impediment that he has. And then we kind of get that, we get that bit shortly after, and I think it's Bertie and Elizabeth are standing against a wall after this speech, or it might be before, but like they're just kind of off center, and it's negative space around them. There's no other focal point. It's just like a bare wall. It's an interesting shot, and it kind of conveys this idea that like Bertie is an island unto himself. That's how he feels about this distance he has from the public because of his speech impediment. And like you're saying, that those first few meetings that he has with Lionel, and they put Bertie in like the lower left corner of the screen, but he's facing that corner as though he's speaking to someone, and then Lionel has the mirrored shot. And you know, this is a standard thing. Like you want to match eye lines. You don't want to break that, like, you don't want to break, I think it's the 180 rule. Like you just want to have some continuity between where those eye lines are matching when people are having dialogue in the shot, reverse shot idea. And, that the initial framing of Bertie is again, this like isolating thing. He's talking about his isolation. He's talking about his challenges. Great. Framing makes perfect sense. Why does Bertie have the same framing? Is it meant to evoke that he feels isolated at times too? Okay, I can buy that because he's a...
You mean Lionel?
Lionel. Yeah. When Lionel feels isolated too, he's trying to make it as an actor, but is looked down upon in part because of his the fact that he is from the colonies in Australia and is not as regal as they might like, even though he knows every line in every play by Shakespeare. So I get it there because it's kind of like they're finding some common ground, but those sorts of shots continue. Like Elizabeth, when she goes to meet Lionel, gets that similar treatment. She is in like the lower right-hand corner of the frame. You see more of the space behind her, but it's out of focus because of the nature of the lens. And like, what are you telling me? What are you telling me with this information? You're doing this repeated thing. What does it mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean much is the ultimate takeaway I have, which is unfortunate because I think it's interesting, but yeah.
I think that the place where it starts to fall apart for me is less, because I can almost see them doing that for Elizabeth and the royal family just generally, because there is a very clear sense of dysfunction.
Yeah.
So that makes an amount of sense to me. And Lionel by himself, okay, sure, we could make some arguments for him feeling a little bit out of place here in England, though it appears he and his wife have been here for a very long time. But then also, like, he has very clear, very healthy relationships with, like, his children and his wife, and they're very close, and he doesn't have that same kind of isolation in his character that Bertie does, and even that Elizabeth does. And his relationship with his children is much more affectionate, although Bertie tries to do that outside of the confines of being the king. And then they have those alone shots very occasionally with Lionel's wife. And I'm like, why is she getting this treatment? Because she's, for all intents and purposes, you know, they have a very clear and loving relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a moment where Lionel is sitting at his desk because he and Bertie have had an argument. And his wife is asking him questions like, you know, are you okay? You seem down. Like, just go apologize to him. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But Lionel is framed on the side of the screen by himself while we get his wife's, you know, conversation. Yeah. And, okay, sure, he's isolated from Bertie, I guess. But he is in a room with his wife and his children who like to play games with him, who are spending a lot of time with him, who at no point have we been shown that they are in any way isolated, except for when he lies to his wife about the Queen coming for dinner or coming for tea, at which point he might die. But, like, maybe he earned that. So, you know, there are some moments where it's like, did you see that shot and you liked that shot and maybe you just used it a couple extra times just because it looked cool?
Yeah.
And then that takes away from the impact of it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's like we were talking about in Rogue One, where there were a couple different shooting styles where it's supposed to be like very restrained and tight and mounted cameras for all the Imperial stuff, and then a lot more handheld stuff for the rebels and etc. And they kind of abandoned that because the director felt it was creatively stifling. And I get the same vibe with this, where it's kind of like, oh, I like this. Should it mean something? No, that will limit me. I'm going to do it wherever I want, which is like, okay, sure. I think that there are some great shots that really highlight isolation. And because I think ultimately that's what, like I've been saying, that's what this movie's about, is overcoming that. But it's just not consistent in how it's applied. And that's frustrating, you know? It's, because there would be some really cool visual storytelling going on here that we wouldn't need as much of the on-the-nose exposition or, you know, characters basically saying, well, as you know, here's my backstory and my motivation right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. And...
well...
yeah.
No, go for it.
Well, there's that, like... we were talking... structurally, too, I think we were talking a little bit about this, that there's the rupture in the relationship between Bertie and Lionel happens after Bertie has apologized to Lionel following his ascent to the throne, and then asking him, like, can you help me with my speech for my speech from the throne, my throne speech, basically. And Lionel says, yes, absolutely. And then they have a falling out again for all of 2 minutes because there are these people whispering in the king's ear, like, my lord, he's not actually a doctor. Like, well, he didn't say he was a doctor. Yes, but he's not really one either. And it's like, well,
and
okay.
He's not.
Yeah, it's so silly.
Those little moments of, and that's one of those places where they could have said, okay, listen, we're basing this off of history. Maybe an argument happened somewhere in there in the actual history of it. But this just feels like a rom-com where it's just like, okay, kiss already.
Yeah.
Stop bouncing back and forth. I know you're best friends. Stop it.
They could have drawn out more of the adversarial stuff in the sessions if you want more of that conflict. And then by this point, it becomes like they're on the same side. The challenge is this big speech coming up that they have to work together on. But again,
I feel like it would have been a stronger moment if the Archbishop, who is the one who complained about Lionel, played by Derek Jacobi, the Archbishop, he's like, no, we found you a proper doctor.
Yeah. And
the king would have been, and Bertie would have been like, the conversation ends the way it should have just happened, when he's like, the Archbishop shows up and he's like, we don't need your services anymore. And Bertie is like, no, actually, he's my guy. And like, it's my head and it's my thing. I'm dealing with it. Go away. And that would have been, I think, way more impactful than this weird little like 2-minute argument of, guys, just kiss already. Like, come on.
Where Lionel has to point out, like, I actually have never said I was a doctor.
Right.
I've never implied that. I just
It's
do
not
this.
on my board.
Yeah.
It's not on my door. It's not on my card. It's literally just, I'm not a doctor. I just did this thing.
Yeah.
It's just silly.
It's silly.
But I will say, because I want to make sure that we're really highlighting here, there are some really cool shots.
Yeah.
And even if they were overused, like there is a moment during this argument where Birdie walks away and he's facing us, the audience, and he's in that bottom left frame. And, he's looking down the Abbey, because they're at Westminster,
Yeah.
where all of these incredible poets and so on are buried, and kings and whatnot. And then the camera shifts just a little bit, and Lionel is sitting in the king's seat, the
Yeah.
one that has been there for millennia, whatever. And he's just like, you can't sit there. And he's like, it's just a chair, man. I don't know what
Yeah.
the problem is. But you've got like this thing where Lionel is the voice of reason on his shoulder sort of
Yeah.
thing. And literally has got his back.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really cool shot because barring anything else, that was a really just cheeky going from they're standing up having this conversational argument. And then suddenly you've just got Jeffrey Rush chilling
Yeah.
with his feet up on this ancient stone and just like,
Yeah.
sup.
Yeah.
It's just very funny.
Well, and it's a cool mirror to the earlier shot of Birdie storming off in the street after he's basically fired Lionel. It is quite, very honestly, quite literally a mirror. I really enjoy that, and it's good. Like these are good shots.
Yeah.
It's just that so many of them don't really serve. They're barely serving the text of the story, let alone the subtext. I think is probably the way that I would put it.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But the ones that really hit for me, when they hit, they hit.
Yeah.
The other one that I really loved is at the beginning we have his speech at the sporting event where he's very nervous. We have that very tight shot of him and the big crowd around him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like the microphone, basically.
Yeah.
And then at the end, when he is making the speech, which is the speech that will announcing the beginning of World War II, we have Lionel has made basically a blanket fort for Birdie to do the speech in, where he has like hung. It looks like my VO booth. Let's be honest. It just looks like my VO booth. There's blankets everywhere, and there's a shot where Lionel's on the left, Birdie's on the right, and the microphone, which is a very shiny silver, stands between them. And the frame gets smaller and smaller until all you see is Birdie reflected in the microphone, but Lionel's still standing there. And I really love that. Not necessarily because it tells the story of like, oh, this is because of you, Lionel. You crushed this in helping Birdie do this. But just because it's a cool shot, because you see him reflected in the microphone. And I think there is something there around like, he is finally showing the people what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because Lionel has been there to support him this whole time. And then as that speech ends and he's just like, hey man, you did a great job. You still tripped up on that W though. And he's like, I had to throw in a few just so they knew it was me. And that cheekiness and that intimacy in that room, just surrounded with blankets, was really lovely. And I really love the way that was framed up for us of like, this is the culmination of an entire film of these two men being stubborn at each other.
Yeah. Oh god, there's some good lines in this. I gotta find, there's a good, some good like back and forth where like, especially early on when Lionel's like, hey, maybe you should stop smoking because I don't think smoke is going to help you speak better. Like that's probably not good for your vocal cords. And Birdie's like, well, my physicians say it relaxes the throat. And Lionel's like, they're idiots. Well, they've all been knighted. It's like, oh, it makes it official then.
Yeah.
Which is very funny.
There's also the king is talking about George V is talking about the microphone and the radio, and he's like, this devilish device will change actors. We've become the lowest form of humanity. We've become actors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God damn. All right.
There was that. There's also that bit
so
of
good.
like, I can't remember the exact line. I'm trying to look up the quote, but like, Lionel's like, well, like obviously, like all princes think before they speak, and Bertie's like, you haven't met many princes, have you? Like the snark that they have about this stuff is incredible.
It's so good. And then there's the moment near the beginning after Mrs. Johnson, after Elizabeth has convinced Bertie to just do your first intro call with this guy. Just come to the office one time. Yeah. That's it. We're going to try it out. And he's like, okay, fine. So he comes to the office and Lionel gets him to talk into a microphone to record himself on a record, but wearing headphones so he can't hear himself speak.
Yeah.
And the microphone is covering his mouth. We can't see his mouth moving in the shot. It's kind of like a little diagonal looking up situation. And then when he plays it later, he's just so angry at himself. He wants to listen to this. It's like when you listen to sad music to make yourself sad.
Yeah.
Or like someone sends you a mean message and you're just like, I'm going to read this again because I want to confirm that I'm a jerk. And he listens to it and it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Relatively. But we don't see him when it starts to play. We see the horn of the gramophone.
Yeah.
And then we see Elizabeth appear behind him of just absolute shock on her face because she's never heard her husband speak so clearly before.
Yeah.
And then he comes into frame of just like, guess I have to go talk to this guy again.
Yeah.
No, he proved me wrong.
That's so good.
And such a good shot and like such a fun angle they play with that reaction and just erasing him as a person and focusing on the voice, I think is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I when they're recording that too, the way that is shot is also really interesting because like Lionel can't hear the music. It's just piping through the headphones. But the camera slowly slowly zooms in on him as he's holding up the microphone to record. And he's just got this smile on his face because he's like, I know, like, he can do this. Like, this is great. This is incredible. He's going to love this. And of course he does. But yeah, this is a good movie with a lot of weird in it, I think. And not cool David Lynch weird, just like, why did you do this? Why did you make this decision? Mm-hmm. And I think that there's so much in here that is worthy of praise, but alongside it, I'm just confused about some of the decisions that were made. And
yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that they did really well, because I do want to look at some of those pieces.
Yeah.
Obviously, is the montage, because we've talked about the fact that if we focus on the part where it's a character study, they crush it.
Yeah.
They're so good. Good. Every moment where we have those intimate pieces where Lionel's interacting with his kids, with his wife, Bertie and Elizabeth are interacting even. There's some marital stuff going there. You see their relationship and what they're like together. You see the two of them as the training we get the training montage, and I love where when they first meet each other in their first interaction, he arrives. I don't even think he takes off his hat, but I'd have to double check. But he sits on this couch, legs crossed, looking very very princely, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then every subsequent conversation, he has different levels of undress. And not in like a, inappropriate way, but like he takes his coat off, he takes his hat off, he takes his jacket off, he takes his tie is loosened, his tie is gone, the buttons on the top are released because they are starting to build that trust, they are starting to build that relationship. And then later, when Birdie is really opening up about the abuse that he suffered from his nanny, from his family, etc. They do the isolation shots, and they're like, okay, we've hit on that a lot already, but he's sitting alone gluing a little plane together, but his clothes are all disheveled. And he is opened up to do all of this weird exercises because there's like lifting Her Royal Highness up and down as he breathes to exercise his diaphragm. He's doing all sorts of like rolling around on the ground, weird, like all the vocal exercises. But then in this moment when Lionel is acting as therapist rather than like just, the physical mechanical challenges of speech, it's not an intentional undressing. It is just, he's just kind of a mess.
Well, he's able to relax in a way that he rarely gets to. And, there's something to be said about like especially later on, the notion of, there's a theme in here as well about like heavy is the head that wears the crown. The way that is explored in the narrative is a little strange to me. That's beside the point. But I'm glad that you brought up that scene with the model making, because that's a shot that I'm blown away by. Like the composition of that shot is incredible because it's almost framed like a stage play. It's almost blocked like a stage play, which is cool because Lionel's an actor. He wants to work on stage, and it's interesting that the camera moves for kind of like walk and talk shots in this, but it's largely a lot of very static compositions, and the characters move in the frame versus the camera moving to follow them. And this shot is interesting because it starts as that stage-like composition, and it kind of tracks in, zooms in to capture as the characters move closer together, and then does the pedestal move downwards a little bit as they both sit in the chairs. And they cut away from that. But it kind of implies, like, this is a turning point. This is that moment where, like, there we go. That's the intimacy of friendship. This is a connection beyond, I'm going to help you professionally. There's something more here. They don't really come back to that, but they do repeated shots in, I think, that room, actually. But it's the same room, this kind of drawing room, living room of sorts, because the boys, Lionel's boys are in there reading their books one now and then, and it's got the similar stage-like framing, and it works there as well because Lionel's doing his Shakespeare game thing. So, it's this. I really like that. I think that's really cool. I wish the movie played a little more with that idea versus the inconsistent use of negative space.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of many a Shakespeare line, but all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, right? And in those moments where we get a very stage-like framing, particularly because so many of Shakespeare's pieces are royalty about, British kings and queens and such, it would have been really interesting to see another universe where this movie was made with more of an eye towards that.
Yeah, I was just
thinking. It would
thinking.
have been really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially because we get that thesis statement from George V at the front, where he's like, we're actors now, and actors suck.
Yeah.
And, like, and so there's something in here that's kind of a kind with, like, Primal Fear, where it's like, well, public existence is a performance. Versus Primal Fear's thing of like, we all have masks. And this would be like the mask of performance. To be a figure in public is to be performing constantly. And there's a different kind of pressure associated with that. And it doesn't really want to dive into those waters, which, okay, fair. But I think that would have been a really cool, like you're saying, that would have been such a cool thread through this entire thing that would really pull it together in a way that it doesn't quite get. As it exists now. We haven't even talked about the fact that like Guy Pearce is in this as Edward VIII, like, because there's an entire, the abdication crisis is in here,
It's just a whole thing.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's built up as being like this major plot point, but ultimately it serves to put Bertie on the throne as George VI. And that's a little... I don't know.
It feels a bit like a foregone conclusion, because it is a foregone conclusion, because he will become the king, because that's literally how history went. Yeah. And I'm not saying that when you watch historical fiction, like, what I'm saying is it shouldn't presume that you know the story because it's a movie. It should be self-contained. And so this makes it feel like, well, he's just not going to, obviously Bertie's going to be the king. Obviously. It's like, well, no, it shouldn't be obvious to us. There should be some clear tension here that it's not, and it just doesn't draw enough of that tension for me.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to kind of go back to is what you were saying. That through line, I think, would have, as actors, as being performers at all times, whatever, would have been a really interesting coupling with the idea that fear and bravery are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And I think that is the case because if Bertie, I mean, one of the biggest fears for most people is public speaking. That's just, like, it's just a thing that people don't like. And I get that. I love it, but I'm a weirdo. And having to become this kingly figure in a way that is still true to himself, I think we get very close to it. Mm-hmm. I think we get, like, within kissing distance of that theme of, Bertie, you can be a king and you don't have to sacrifice who you are as a person to do that thing. You can still be the quiet, very, like, cozy man that you are. You just have to also be able to show people that you are able to lead them in a way that makes sense. And we get so close, but we don't quite hit it for me, where he does step into himself as this, not confident speaker perhaps, but much more confident and more confident in himself. I don't know what it is about that ending, though, that doesn't give me that full, like, landing that I want, that he has become brave for himself.
Well, I think in part it is because they're a little inconsistent with who he is as a person. We are introduced to Bertie, like, second to public speaking. His next greatest fear is that he will become the king. He does not want that. Yes. He wants to live a quiet life with his wife and children. He does not want to be the king. He does not want that responsibility, and he does not want that attention. So most of his interactions with David, aka Edward VIII, his brother, the king who I think it's June 1936 to December of that year is his reign as king. Every interaction he has with David is kind of like, look, you have to be the king because I don't want to be the king. That's the kind of, like, motivation he has for that sort of interaction. Until the abdication crisis rears its head for real, at which point Bertie's motivation stops being, well, I don't want to be the king. It starts being, but thou must be the king, because that's what one must do. And as a good royal, you should be willing to rise to the occasion, which is an abrupt sort of shift. It's not like, it's not particularly egregious, but it stops being about Bertie the individual and suddenly becomes about the institution. And it feels odd because it kind of feels like the energy is kind of like they ran this script past the royal family and they were like, well, no, he has to be, like, this has to be the angle he takes. He can't not, like, at the end of the day, he has to want to be the king. And it's like, well, I mean, he can rise to the occasion and still be terrified of it and not ultimately want it. I think like the idea of they don't do enough to surface the idea of service, if that makes sense. The idea of like of reigning as the monarch being a service to the population and the institution and the station. They're focused more on like but thou must. I don't know. There's a weird difference. Yeah.
No, I like that a lot. I like the I like the idea of if Birdie is looking at being the king as a responsibility given to a person in this family line because he is divinely pointed at and said, that guy. Because you came out of a queen, you're going to be a king. That's it. That's the rule. If that is true, his story going from, I don't want to be king, I just want to live this life, I do not expect to be king, whatever, to suddenly, you have to be the king, you're the guy.
Yeah.
That desire to be quiet and with his family and stuff doesn't go away. But if we had just dialed up a little bit that sense of responsibility and that he is stepping into that responsibility, that I think would have cinched it. Because during the speech at the end, we cut to all the different people around the world listening to this speech. And the beginning of the speech is something to the effect of, would that I could come into your home as your friend and have this conversation with you rather than from, this studio room, whatever. And obviously they used a historical speech, so they didn't change anything. But if they'd taken the idea that in that moment, he was talking to Lionel and pulled that apart just a little bit more of, I am stepping into this responsibility as one of the British Empire, not just me, the guy who is divinely indicated to be the king.
Yeah.
I think maybe that would have helped it land for me, because then it is not disingenuous to his fear. It is telling us, no, he's afraid, and that's okay, because he bravely overcame that fear.
Yeah.
Good job, Birdie.
Yeah. Yeah, you map his growth as an individual to his growth as a public figure. Incredible. They don't really do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm just dunking on this movie a lot. I don't, it's not that I dislike it. I just think that like, I wish that it did things differently. I don't know.
I think it's so close to being masterful that I want it to, I'm rooting for it to be masterful. And so when it doesn't fulfill that masterfulness, I'm like,
Yeah. And it won so many Oscars too. Like it got Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Colin Firth, Best, I think, Adapted Screenplay. There's clearly a lot of talent involved in this.
Yes,
although the director did go on to direct Cats, so I mean, one bad movie does not ruin someone's career. I shouldn't be too mean. That I don't want to be mean, but it's just well, we haven't even really talked about that as this being, is this an example of Oscar bait? Because it's a very it's a period piece. It's a drama about a notable historical figure. Got a stacked cast. I don't know. Came out
overcoming.
Came out around the holidays, I think.
Probably. I don't remember. Let me see. I think I have the IMDb open.
Speech. December 22nd, 2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right in there before the cutoff for awards consideration.
Goodness me.
It's I mean, like this. This was it was obviously a big success. I don't know. Yeah,
it's good. It's one of those things that there are movies that are so bad they're good. There are movies that are just good. There are movies that are like not quite good enough to be what you want them to be.
Yeah.
This is that. And I don't mean that in a bad way necessarily, because it is good. Like, I mean, I picked it. I enjoy this movie quite a bit. But not unlike, what's it called? So many others, I suppose.
The Rogue One of it all. It's a little messy, and yet we still love it.
Yeah, it's a little messy. Yeah. And that's not bad. But it does invite a lot of conversation around. You could do better. I don't know. That's not even right. It had a lot more potential that could be there in a different iteration of it. I don't know. Again, I enjoy it a whole bunch. I don't necessarily want to, like, to your point, dunk on it, because it's really good. There's things that could have been.
There's a Frasier quote.
Elevated.
Yeah, a Frasier quote that comes to mind, as is so often the case with me, where it's like, the only thing better than a perfect meal is a perfect meal with one flaw that we can pick at for the rest of the night. Which is like,
so this is a perfect meal.
Yeah, this is a good movie with some flaws that are fun to dig into from a critical perspective. So, there's interesting stuff going on here. There's stuff in here that's also like, not sure what the thinking was here, but I respect that. Here's a serious, deep question for you, though, because we see that Bertie, King George VI, enjoys model making.
Yeah.
What Warhammer 40K army do you think he would play?
I don't Warhammer 40K. I'm D&D. He would be, let me see. What would Bertie play? That's the real question in a D&D campaign.
I think from a 40K perspective, he probably plays the Space Wolves, because I think he ultimately wants to be rambunctious and loud, but he can't necessarily do that in his day-to-day life, so he needs that outlet. And by that logic, I think he also mains a barbarian in D&D.
Oh man, I was going to say swashbuckling rogue.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I could see barbarian. But no, I think swashbuckling rogue is the right answer. Elizabeth I, his daughter, was absolutely some kind of wizard. Just because she has that vibe. Or a monk of some variety. Unclear. Because she was a little bit sassy, from what I recall of everything I've ever read of her. Elizabeth II. Margaret was a bard, bar none. Anyway, I will not ascribe a D&D character trope to every single member of the royal family in this film. But I don't know. It overall, good movie, enjoyable.
Yeah.
Some things to pick at, which I think is okay.
That's always fine.
Can I just say how much I enjoy Jeffrey Rush as Lionel, as a bad Shakespearean actor, playing a Shakespeare game with his children, and how well the actors that portrayed his children did of being just the most disinterested teenagers I've ever seen in my life. He's just like, oh, not this game again. It's always Othello. Yeah. It's always Othello. Oh, but it might be a Macbeth. No, it's always Othello.
Except in that case, it was Prospero, I think.
Yeah.
They clock it immediately, which is great.
Yeah.
I love also that Lionel's introduction, or one of his introductory scenes, is his audition to play Richard III. Also involved in not an abdication crisis, but in a crisis of the throne, which is a little on the nose, but also very fun. So
it was very good.
Yeah.
And here's a fun fact. From this movie, there's a section in this movie where Bertie has been crowned. He is now King George VI, and he and his wife come to Lionel's house when his wife is not home explicitly, because he's like, I made sure she was out of the house, don't worry. But she gets home early, and the queen is sitting at the table with the tea set in front of her, and she's just like shell-shocked, because she's like, oh, the queen is at my house, and my husband didn't tell me.
Yeah.
When the queen says, it's Mammas and Ham, not the other way. And that is how I was inspired to tell people how to pronounce my name. Because it's Farrah like far away, not Farrah like my fair lady. Just like I picked that up and I went, this is mine now.
Yeah.
And then followed immediately by my favorite visual gag of Lionel being absolutely terrified of his wife and hiding. It's like, and she might just kill me.
Yeah, I do love that. I love, I also I remember, one of the things that I remember from when I first watched this was being blown away by Helena Bonham Carter as Elizabeth in this, because it is such a reserved performance by necessity, and she nails the royal accent as well, the royal enunciation and pronunciation of words in a way that other actors in this just don't grasp, which is incredible.
She is, I believe, if not a member of the royal family, quite well connected to the royal family, but I might be making that up.
Yeah, I would have to look that up. Yeah, I remember also being like, oh wow, she doesn't just play like the most Tim Burton-esque characters imaginable. Like, she has a career outside of those movies and is quite talented. So I remember being very impressed, and just because like when you kind of like pigeonhole someone in your mind as like, well, they only do this sort of role. You typecast them in your own mind. And I was like, man, she's talented. Everyone in this is talented.
She is, yeah.
I also
such
need to call out, I'm jumping back a little bit here, but like when the Archbishop is like, we'll get you a better doctor, and it's kind of like the guy that they fired originally, who was like, put marbles in your mouth. Demosthenes in ancient Greece did that, and it must work. And it's like, my guy, like, no.
But it hasn't worked since.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very good, very quippy.
Yeah.
I do that to help me pronounce things better, because my enunciation can be a bit of a challenge, but not marbles so much, and not shoving a bunch of them into a man's face. That seems unnecessary. Also, I really love Timothy Spall's Winston Churchill.
He's good.
I really enjoy him. He doesn't get a lot of screen time in this movie, but he just does a really good job at it. And I just love that.
That's good, yeah. God, we should do a ranking of cinematic Churchills at some point. Like, who's our favorite? There's
just so many good ones. I can't, but it's so hard to rank anyone above. He's the dad in Third Rock from the Sun.
John Lithgow.
Oh my, thank you.
Yeah.
I can't. I adore him.
not even Gary Oldman.
Oh, I do love Gary Oldman.
Was good.
It's impossible. I can't pick a favorite.
Rory Kinnear in The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is not a movie it was an entertaining enough movie. I remember Rory Kinnear being all right as Churchill, and what amounted to a cameo there. That was pretty good.
What a solid cast this film has.
Yeah.
Also, seeing Derek Jacobi as the Archbishop after knowing him primarily, I think, in From Hell, the Jack the Ripper movie.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, right, yes. You have done many things, sir, and you're very good at them. But that's where I know you from, and this was a change.
Man, that's a... Have you read... total digression from the actual movie we're talking about here. Have you read the From Hell graphic novel that the movie's based on?
Yes, but it was a long time ago, so I have no specific things about it.
Dramatically different to that movie.
Yes.
Let me say that. Some tough reading at times, but good. Still good. Shout out to Alan Moore.
So good. Speaking of things that are good, Ben, if you want to learn something about movies, why this movie?
I think if you want to learn about... Okay, this is going to sound weird. but I'm basically inverting what I said for us as hosts, what I said about an hour ago about Sanjuro. But if you want to learn about framing, I think this is worth watching because of the big swings it takes in terms of framing and composition. I don't think it nails it, but it does understand sometimes an image is just arresting and interesting. And if you can chase that and find a way to make it work within a wider narrative, it's worth doing so. And so for that alone, I think that this is worth checking out. It doesn't always nail that, but, you know, given the amount of time that we spent talking about framing and composition in this episode, you know, I think that there is something there. So check it out for that, if nothing else.
Excellent.
But if you just want to watch something on a Friday night, Farrah, why The King's Speech?
Because Colin Firth and Jeffrey Rush quipping at each other for 2 hours is very fun. Because Helena Bonham Carter plays a very good wife whose husband can be a little insufferable, and she has to learn how to manage him in the most political way possible, and I love that. And because it's just really charming to see the identity crisis from Bertie as he grapples with fear and growth and responsibility and the feeling of isolation that so many people feel as we are trying to, like, exist in the world. That is relatable, separate from all of the royal stuff. And it's just a lot of fun. Yeah. So you can find us at Patreon as Coffee and Kurosawa. You can also find us on Blue Sky as Coffee Kurosawa Pod. You can find me on Blue Sky and Letterboxd as Farrah Sarpkaya, and at sarpkaya.ca, where I lend my voice as a voice actor. Ben, where can people find you?
The good people and listeners of this podcast and our speeches upon it can find me on Blue Skies at the Benjimon and on Letterboxd as at Benjimon.
Wonderful. I think that brings us to the end of today's speech. I don't know. The red light is blinking, so we will see you next time.
Yeah, and remember, if you're ever feeling stuck, just say all the swear words you possibly can in as short an amount of time as possible, and everything will be okay.